My name is Lucas Eileen and I'm an artist and one of the members of the Kandos School of Cultural Adaptation. At the first Cementa Festival in 2013, Ian Millis contributed a poster called Welcome to Kandos. Ian Millis's poster was a reimagining of Kandos in the future, post the closure of the cement works.
Thermal plants, university, changing the cement works into botanical gardens. I'd be happy with any of them in here. Any of them in Kandos, let alone all of them.
Everything in that pamphlet exists, just doesn't exist in Kandos, that's all.
One of the future scenarios that he predicts is the formation of the Kandos School of Cultural Adaptation. Artist Gilbert Grace, he decided to take this seriously and form KSCA.
It went viral, and that's how KSCA basically got started. Since then, everybody has jumped on board. We've got some fantastic people involved, and I'm just so glad that it actually had the legs to take off and become what it's become today. Everything on that Welcome to Kandos poster should be happening.
And the first action of the Kandos School of Cultural Adaptation is to host the FUTURELANDS2 public forum.
So FUTURELANDS was the concept of Anne Finnegan, and she developed a short list of ideal speakers. And then in collaboration with the Kandos School of Cultural Adaptation, of which Anne is a member, along with Diego Bonetto, Lucas Eileen, Ian Millis, Alex Wissar, Gilbert Grace and myself, we expanded upon her original list and also wanted to make a weekend forum which could be quite participatory, so that it wasn't just about listening to talks, but that you could have some excursions and you could take people into different environments. And I ended up taking on the role of convener or kind of lead organiser for FUTURELANDS. What we set out to do with FUTURELANDS2 was to bring about a kind of mingling of different perspectives on land. And I think as artists and as intellectuals, we're often involved in conversations about the aesthetics of nature or concerns about sustainability and about the degradation of land, and we're not necessarily able to actually be in conversations with people who make their living from the land or have direct practical experience of actually maintaining environments. So what we wanted to do with FUTURELANDS too was to bring all these different viewpoints on land together and into conversation and create a real safe place in which perspectives on land which might be in tension, say between conservationists and farmers, could just be opened up to public debate and for people who are not so expert to sort of contribute to that conversation.
The Kandos School of Cultural Adaptation is particularly interested in this notion of adaptation. So how, as a society, can we move ourselves to the next position that we need to be in the changing environment that we're in? One of the ways that we can do that is by collaborating across those disciplinary boundaries. So much in Australia of the land use is agricultural, and we have a lot to learn from the way that land is used by farmers. And we hope, as artists, that our practices of experimentation may also have something to offer for the farming community. The great thing about hosting a forum like FUTURELANDS here in Kandos is that Kandos is a place which has become a hotspot for contemporary creative arts practice, and it is surrounded by farmland. So it's an opportunity for that cross-disciplinary dialogue to occur between farmers and artists. As an artist, I've been working with sugarcane farmer Simon Matson from Mackay in central Queensland, and the last 2 months before the FUTURELANDS forum, I've been in Mackay participating in soil health workshops with a community of farmers up there in Mackay. We were able to bring Simon Matson down to participate in FUTURELANDS and share that exchange process.
I really feel strongly about reaching out to a wider audience. And when I got to meet Lucas, I suddenly realised that perhaps through art I could reach a much wider audience, because talking to one farmer at a time is going to take me too long to make that change happen on the ground.
For him, it was a fantastic opportunity to speak to an audience about his innovative farming practices beyond the farming community.
What was really exciting for us as organisers is that FUTURELANDS2 attracted a really varied audience. So we had people from within the region who are farmers, or even from further afield. We also had some retirees who'd bought property in the area and are seeking to learn how to develop that land or restore that land. We had a real mix of artists and scholars and academics, and we had children in the room, we had dogs. It was very inclusive and varied.
Not only did we have fantastic participation from local residents here in the Kandos district, but also lots of environmentally minded people from Sydney especially travelled up here, and by meeting together in the same room we begin to bridge that cultural disconnect between urban greenies and rural communities.
So we brought together some really fantastic speakers from a variety of disciplines and experiences. Adam Blakester, who is the Director of Starfish Initiatives, a charity around rural enterprise and grassroots community action. Jason Tuckwell, a philosopher from the University of Western Sydney. Gerda Rolvink is an economic geographer. Bruce Pascoe is an Indigenous historian. He's written a lot of fiction and non-fiction works over the years and is also a farmer. Clara Marazeki is involved in the Australian Hemp Alliance and also the Australian Hemp Masonry Company, so she's an entrepreneur and a real campaigner for hemp. Michelle Hines and Larry Towney are from Central Tableland Land Services, and they bring Indigenous knowledge about fire, or sort of cool burn techniques, and other Indigenous land care practices. Simon Matson is a sugarcane farmer. Tracy Norman is a Dungog Shire councillor and also the managing director of Dungog Festival. Jill Moore-Kashima is a farmer and a custodian of land who has great knowledge in bush regeneration. Kirsten Bradley from Milkwood Permaculture, and Artisters family who are Meg Ullman, Patrick Jones and their children Woody and Zephyr.
The weekend was a great success. 150 people came along. They were completely hypnotised by an amazing keynote lecture by Bruce Pascoe. They were fed beautifully by Diego Bonetto, Chef Joey Astorga, on a dinner of foraged foods. We had a welcome to country from Lynn and Emma Syme. On Saturday afternoon we had a tour out to Stuart Andrews' farm called Marloo.
What we've got a lot of positive feedback on was the trip to Marloo, which is Stuart Andrews' farm. People felt really privileged to actually be taken out to hear from him directly about the practices he's undertaking to restore that land.
How do you create an income and repair the land at the same time?
So this was really unusual experience for many people from the city and really enriching for them. The trip out to Ganguddy or Dun Swamp created a very interesting environment in which to discuss how an art sensibility or an artistic method of experimenting and thinking through concepts in a propositional way can inform engagements with land, engagements with agriculture, which is what Artisters family and Kirsten Bradley and Lucas Eileen, as artists, they really led that conversation. And so we were out there among the pagodas in a really beautiful environment having a conversation in this very natural amphitheatre. And then Hayden Washington, as an old school sort of conservationist and environmental activist, was able to share his knowledge of that geological heritage of that site and the wealth of botanical knowledge he has. Something some of us as organisers were really conscious of is that a lot of discussions about land and the use of land in academic contexts and also in artistic contexts happen at a real distance from the land itself. And when you hear from a farmer who's spent their life on the land and actually the stakes are high for them, they actually have to make a living from the land, you suddenly kind of see a lot of these debates in a new light. And I think that's something we hope to hold on to with FUTURELANDS as it continues. Indigenous knowledge and particularly Indigenous knowledge of fire and of agriculture was really central to FUTURELANDS, and we put a lot of thought into how Indigenous knowledge could be brought into a very contemporary conversation about land care. And so Bruce Pascoe's knowledge of Indigenous agricultural practices from the past, as well as his quite entrepreneurial movements into thinking about how native food sources might be able to be reintroduced in the southeast of Australia.
That's the kangaroo grass bred, that one. Within 5 years, we'll be eating this out of bakeries, that bread.
Larry Towney and Michelle Hines talking about cool burning techniques, this regeneration of Indigenous fire stick farming methods in managing forest and managing the wildfire problem. To have that kind of expertise brought into conversation with farmers like Stuart Andrews, or questions about conservation which might come from a very different scientific kind of heritage. We were really pleased with how those different sources of knowledge could be brought into conversation. The success of FUTURELANDS was that it could speak to a lot of different audiences and bring, for example, scientific knowledge about soil microbiology to a public who might not be that informed about those details. And then on the other hand, we had conversations about renewable energy and the new wind farm, which is somewhat contentious in the area, but is something that a lot of people in the cities are concerned about. Why is this renewable energy not being rolled out further? So the success of the event was that knowledge from different experience was shared in a very democratic way.
People who attended the public forum were really energised. The fact that it happened outside of an academic or institutional environment here in rural, regional New South Wales was really important. The fact that there were trips beyond the town was really important, and people had travelled all the way from Queensland and Victoria and other parts of rural New South Wales and the big cities to be here, and it created a fantastic opportunity for people from all different disciplines to speak across those boundaries.
What we were able to do with FUTURELANDS is show that the artistic interventions are often ways of proposing change or proposing new ways of doing things, or kind of shedding or casting a new light on problems that are very polarising, and that's something that we hope that as FUTURELANDS evolves as perhaps a series that might go to different locations, that it's always about that bringing that experimental and sort of propositional language of art into a setting where all these really high-stake questions about how we care for land are being negotiated by people, often in really confrontational ways, in which there's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of simplifying of the debate. And that's what we think the artistic contribution can really change.